Thank you for joining us tonight on a very special episode of The Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters, and I'm so glad you've decided to tune in here for this big-time half hour where we're going to talk a lot of Indy 500 news because there's a huge development that happened over the course of the week stemming from an incident that happened during the Sunday qualifications during the Fast 12. And Team Penske is going to have to start at the rear, but only 2 Team Penske cars, and I'll tell you why coming up here on the show. So before we get in, make sure to follow me on social media. If you like this show, you can do so by looking up at rpeeters33. That's RPEETERS 33, and be sure to also get that WTHR Plus app downloaded on your smart TV because we have a lot of exclusive Indianapolis 500 content that is free to view anytime you want on demand. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the big thing because here's what we need to discuss. Joseph Newgarden and Will Power were penalized after Newgarden's car was discovered to have a altered rear attenuator. Now, Team Penske then pulled the 12 car out of line. This is during the Fast 12 portion of the Sunday qualification. So they divided the pole qualifying into 2 groups. So on Saturday, everybody qualified. The top 12 was then locked into those positions, and then they would requalify again on Sunday, basically, and then they would have 2 rounds, and the fastest 6 cars would then be able to, in the first round, would then be able to run for the pole in the final round, and that's how that happened. So, as the cars were going up, we have Will Power's car goes through tech inspection, there's no problem, but according to the Indycar tech inspector, he said that, hey, Kevin Blanche was his name. He said, hey, I noticed something weird on this rear attenuator. It didn't look right. And but he let Newgarden's car through, he let Power's car through. And then when Newgarden's car comes through, he says, hey, I'm seeing the same thing again. I'm going to flag this. This is illegal. So Penske basically had 2 options here. They could qualify the car and just get disqualified to have their qualifying times pulled, or they could just not go out at all. Save tires, save fuel, whatever. They elected to do the latter, not qualify at all. So, as a result, then they forfeited. They didn't start out, so they were going to start from the 4th row. Now, the reason why Scott McLaughlin's car was not involved in this is because his car crashed in practice of that before that Sunday qualifying. So before the Fast 6, Fast 12 qualifying, Scott McLaughlin crashed, hit the wall. They decided, you know what, the car is going to take too long to repair. Let's not even worry about it. Let's go ahead and just qualify 12. You know, let's take the 12th place starting spot and call it a day. And that's what they did. But what ended up happening, obviously, on the following Monday, we find out that rather than starting in row 4, Power and Newgarden will now be relegated to the 32nd and 33rd starting spots. McLaughlin will keep his time as he crashed in the morning practice, but as his team did not run the Fast 12. Now, here's the other thing that was discovered on Monday. This was all going down before and during and even after that post-qualifying practice where they turned down the boost, and it's the last last practice session before Carb Day on Friday. All of this goes down. So then you have these reporters who obviously are in that press conference where it's announced, hey, Newgarden and Power are going to be moved to the back row. And they go down to the newly renovated Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum. And in that museum, you have Newgarden's 2024 winning car just sitting there. And what do you think they notice? They notice that the attenuator is modified. So now let's go over what the attenuator is. Here's what we're talking about. It is the rear part on the car that you'll kind of see there, and it's designed for safety. It's designed to absorb the impact during a rear-end collision with the wall for these cars, and that's what it's there for. So, as a result of that, because it's there for safety, the way it's delivered out of the box to teams when they're getting these cars, they're putting together these chassis, it's supposed to not be touched. You're not supposed to touch it because it is a safety protocol. So they don't want you to touch it. They don't want you to modify it because it's a safety issue. If something is modified and it might not work as it's intended. So, as a result of that, that rule is placed in the rule book that says, hey, you cannot modify this attenuator for any reason whatsoever. And Penske did. Team Penske then did modify the rear attenuator. So, now that Penske has modified the rear attenuator, the question becomes, well, what was the benefit to that? What was really the benefit to all of that in the first place? Well, it might have been just for purely aesthetics reasons. It doesn't seem like it had really any major aerodynamic advantage, maybe a smidge, maybe I think a tenth of a mile an hour, not even a tenth, less than that, maybe a hundredth of a thousandth or a thousandth of a mile an hour, barely anything really. But it did go against the rules. You're not supposed to modify that rear attenuator because, again, it is a safety issue. And when you're talking about the instance of safety, you start to get real, this is serious. This is absolutely serious. So what then happens the following Wednesday? We have a day where we're just simmering on it. Now it comes to Wednesday. On Wednesday, Team Penske announced that it had fired Team Penske President Tim Cindric, IndyCar Managing Director Ron Rzuski, and IndyCar General Manager Kyle Moyer. A huge bombshell, again, never been seen before in the history of IndyCar racing, at least not recently. Maybe it has before, but not to my knowledge. And so this is just, again, days before the Indianapolis 500. Now, if you are familiar with Tim Cindric, everybody kind of assumed he would be the heir apparent to Team Penske at some point. This is no longer the case. Some people have even started to question, well, is Austin Cindric's NASCAR job secure? Probably. But who knows? Who really knows at this point? Everything's up in the air. Now, Team Penske has, obviously, in addition to those two cars getting kicked to the rear of the field in the Indy 500, you also had your strategists, your crew chiefs, fined, suspended, all that fun jazz. So now Team Penske's got a whole new roster of people that they're going to be coming out and running the three cars. And then you're also going to have two of those three cars have to come from the very back. Oof. Now, let's talk about this. In a press conference on Wednesday, Doug Boles took responsibility. Now, keep in mind, Doug Boles is now the IndyCar president. So he's not just the IMS president, he's also the IndyCar president now. So he took responsibility and said that the tech inspectors just simply messed up, and that the series is now looking into an independent governing body in the wake of the scandal, which is something that, according to Nathan Brown of the Indy Star, was not on their register 5 weeks ago. That was not a topic of conversation as recently as 5 weeks ago, but Doug Boles in the press conference then says, no, we've been looking into this for about 6 months. Also, some reporting kind of conflicting with what Marshall Pruitt in that same conference asked Doug Boles point blank, saying, hey, did anybody tell you, any team file this formal protest, file this issue, bring this issue to your attention at any point? Because Marshall Pruitt said he had on the record that Chip Ganassi Racing had raised this issue before. Because keep in mind, when this attenuator violation was found, Team Penske, on Newgarden's car, Team Penske tried to change it on Power's car, which is against the rules because that car's already gone through tech inspection. You can't do anything other than make a wing adjustment, if that, on the car, or tire pressure adjustment. The car has to be exactly as it is when it went through tech. And they were trying to change that. So obviously Chip Ganassi Racing sounded the alarm, and you had Doug Boles kind of say, no, I wasn't aware of that, but Marshall Pruitt saying, no, I have somebody on the record saying that yes, they did raise this problem. They did sound the alarm to somebody. So some very conflicting things of that. Now, obviously, in regards to the car being found, the last year's race-winning car being found with the same modified attenuator, Doug Boles did say that there will not be any changes to the results of the 2024 race. That result has already been solidified. They're not going to change it. They're not going to bother changing it. They're not going to even look into that. Obviously, it passed tech. It passed post-inspection. It is what it is. But the optics of this are insanely bad if you're Roger Penske. And I think that's the key. Obviously, he said it in an interview with Jamie Little. He pretty much said that's why he made these big firings. Again, a lot of people, myself included, I kind of feel like this Team Penske thing, this is kind of a conflict of interest, okay? Him running the series and him running a team in the series that he owns, you need to have, as they've called it, a separation of church and state. And that's what Doug Bowles is alluding to, saying that he's looking into this. They're now looking into actually having this independent governing body come in and run IndyCar absent of Roger Penske's influence, which honestly should have happened the moment that Roger Penske purchased the series in the first place. I mean, him owning the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is one thing. That, who cares? He's owned tracks that they've raced before in kart. He's owned tracks that they've raced before in NASCAR. There's no different. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if he's a track promoter. What matters is the fact that he owns the series and he owns a team in the series, and there's nobody else that reports to him. It's not like kart. If you remember how kart was structured, you had a board. You had a board of owners. People, they had a say in how the racing series was going to be run. It wasn't just one owner. Yes, all of these owners were on the board that made these decisions or helped influence these decisions in one way, shape, or form. But for the most part, it wasn't like one owner was it wasn't like Barry Green was able to go over and say, no, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna make this unilateral change, I can do that, without the permission of a Roger Penske or a Chip Ganassi or a Paul Newman and Carl Haas. That's kind of what we're looking at here. So all of this combined has really cast a pretty substantial shadow over the Indianapolis 500. But, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, there could be some interesting storylines to watch during the race, especially after qualifying. So, stay tuned for that. But for right now, let's talk about some of the other IndyCar news that we need to get to real quick. Again, it's a mainly North American focused show today, guys, because obviously two of the biggest races in North America are this weekend. And it's important to talk about those, so we'll go ahead and just focus on that. If you're an F1 fan, we'll talk about Monaco a little bit. Max Verstappen did win in Imola, which was a great thing for him to kind of beat that McLaren stronghold on the championship, kind of show that, hey, again, there is still a little bit of parity in Formula One, at least amongst the top teams, so kind of interesting there. But let's talk about this IndyCar news here. First of all, pole sitter Robert Shwartzman. I will admit right now, if you watched my show last week, you probably heard me say I'm concerned about Shwartzman. I think he might be the one to get bumped from the field. I'm eating crow. All right, I should eat something on air, but I don't think I have anything that won't kill me around me right here. But at some point, I will think about finding a sock or something that I can stuff in my mouth, because I could not have been more wrong. But remember, I did preface it by saying practice is misleading. And if you look at where Shwartzman was all week on the practice charge, he was nowhere near the top until Fast Friday. Sorry. Excuse me. Again, I said those results were misleading. They were definitely misleading in that regard. So that was pretty cool there. But then the other piece of IndyCar news, this kind of hit our inboxes over the week. That was kind of neat. Simon Pagenaud has apparently taken a mentoring role to help Théo Pourchaire develop his racing career, which is great to see. And I hope that Pagenaud is able to use some of his connections with maybe Team Penske and maybe with some other teams that he's raced with before in the past to maybe like Meyer Shank even, to maybe get Théo Pourchaire an IndyCar ride, or at least an Indy 500 ride, or, something, maybe an F1 ride. I think he deserves to be an F1, but he loves IndyCar, so I think if he loves IndyCar, he should be allowed to be here in this race, and I'd love to see him at an Indy 500 coming up here in a couple of years, excuse me. Excuse me, what am I talking about? A couple of years. Let's talk about some quick NASCAR news here. Again, we had the AllStar race over the weekend. Fun time. We're going to get to that here after the break. But right now, the big NASCAR news that broke is the NASCAR Hall of Fame class of 2026 inductees have been announced. And those are Kurt Busch, 2004 NASCAR Cup Series champion, 2014 Indy 500 Rookie of the Year. Not relevant to the NASCAR Hall of Fame, but just wanted to throw that in there because it is important. And then we've got Harry Gant. He was also inducted. And Ray Hendrick. And then as a recipient of the Landmark Award, it will go to track promoter, Charlotte Motor Speedway track promoter Humpy Wheeler. Will be the recipient of the Landmark Award. So that is the class of 2026 NASCAR Hall of Fame inductees. Great news to see. Congratulations to everybody there. Great to see Harry Gant get in. Especially, that's important. I mean, Mr. September, how can you forget about Harry Gant? You have to put him in the NASCAR Hall of Fame, and I'm glad that it happened while he's still here, and sooner rather than later as well. So, All right. Like I said, we got to take a break here real quick, but when we come back, we are going to break down everything from Indy 500 qualifying and preview the final race miss, probably of the foreseeable future. So, don't go anywhere. You're watching The Racing Report. And welcome back to The Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters, and I'm so glad that you have stuck around through this commercial break so that we could come back and bring you the Indy 500 qualifying breakdown. As I said before the break, Robert Schwartzman won the pole. He's the first rookie to set the fastest time in qualifying, win the pole, since Teo Fabi did in 1983. Now, he's not the most recent rookie to sit in the pole, because technically that was Tony Stewart in 1996, though Stewart did not qualify on the pole. He merely inherited that because, unfortunately, Scott Brayton lost his life in a practice accident the following week, or after he'd already won the pole. And so, but still, it's kind of cool to see the Prema team, which was founded in 1983, with car number 83, having the first rookie pole sitter since 1993. Numbers are cool, right? Hey, how about this? Let's rounding out the front row is Takuma Sato. Takuma Sato at 48 years old. Age is but a number, right? Especially Helio Castroneves, he qualified as well. He's 50. He's going to try. The drive for 5 is still on. Like I said, he looked pretty quick in some of the practice sessions, so maybe that bodes well for him in traffic. Get some good pit strategy in there, maybe. Maybe the drive for 5 can happen for Castroneves. Who knows? Yeah, like I said, Takuma Sato, 48, probably has one of the best chances to win his third 500, which props to him, especially since he destroyed that car in just weeks ago during the open test session. So the Ray Hall Letterman Lanigan team worked to put that car back together, and it was fast enough to sit in the middle of the front row. Almost sat on the pole. That's impressive. That is a very impressive milestone, and I think everybody on that team should be very proud of what they've accomplished. And then, of course, hey, he's got unfinished business here. Pato O'Ward qualified P3 for the Indianapolis 500, and I think a lot of people are going to pick him as the favorite. But I'm not going to do that today, because I'm going to wait till Carb Day. I have always traditionally waited until Carb Day to pick my predictions for who I think might win the Indianapolis 500. So stay tuned for that. That'll be right here on the Racing Report coming up here on WTHR Plus. Now, let's talk about the back of the grid a little bit, because Jacob Abel, another Dale Coyne car, another rookie in a Dale Coyne car, bumped from the field this year. Dale Coyne cars, again, I'm going to have to eat crow again, because I said the Dale Coyne cars could be, potential dark horses. They were not. They were not dark horses. They were maybe dark horses to get into the last chance qualifier, but not dark horses for the pole. So I was wrong there. But Rinus VeeKay did this scary. I don't know what the team was thinking. They withdrew their time during the last handful of minutes in the LCQ and during the last row shootout, and I was nervous there. Then they went out and did one last run, and they did not go any faster. They, in fact, went slower. So they withdrew their time and then posted a slower time. And then their teammate, Jacob Abel, was just about to go out there. If Abel didn't run a slower time, if Abel went faster, VeeKay would have been out. Now, what's crazy, too, is this is the lowest Rinus VeeKay has ever started in Indy 500. He has traditionally only ever started in the first 3 rows. This is going to be the lowest he's ever started. I'm curious to see how he's going to handle that on race day. We'll see. I'll take a look at during Carb Day and see what, how his car looks in traffic, and maybe make that kind of determination. But very interesting. Speaking of the LCQ, the last row shootout, Graham Rahal, for the first time in 2 years, was not in it. And I think he was just thrilled to not have to worry about a darn thing on Sunday. He could just start turning his attention to the race and how they were gonna tackle the race there. Hey, good job for Graham Rahal there. And then, hey, let's talk about some drivers that had good qualifying runs after practice crashes. Colton Herta and Marcus Armstrong both had they weren't fast, but they were quick enough to get into the field and quick enough to avoid being in the last row shootout, which I think is just as important when you're talking about potentially rebuilding a car, coming out there with a backup car even, and really just hoping it sticks and hoping that it can produce a run that's good enough to get into the Indianapolis 500. And they did that. Good on them. Also, Marco Andretti. Man, that was crazy. I mean, think about 5 years ago, the guy was on the pole, and now he was in danger of being bumped out. Now, I understand that the Andretti cars were kind of okay. Obviously, Marcus Ericsson was the best of them, but Kyle Kirkwood didn't really like his speed in qualifying. Colton Herta as well, obviously, after crashing and going to a backup car. That was... I don't know if they're going to trim that car out as much now, but it might be decent in the race, in traffic. Who knows? But, Marco Andretti, who was going to start in the last row, well, now he's going to start in the second to last row, so not bad for him. But then, watch out for this row 2. This row 2, I think, could be real sneaky, and that's going to be Scott Dixon, Felix Rosenqvist, and Alex Palou. I think that the winner could come from that row. Now, if it was Scott Dixon, he would... I did the math on this a couple of weeks ago. If Scott Dixon wins on Sunday, I believe he will break Juan Montoya's record of longest gap between Indy 500 victories, because Montoya stood for 15 years between 2000 and 2015, and Dixon's last one was in 2008, which I believe was about 17 years ago. So that would break that record, and I kind of wonder if it could happen. If there's anybody who could do it, I think it would be Dixon getting his second Borg Warner. But again, not going to make those predictions until Carb Day. But again, watch that row 2. I think that could be a real sneaky row, especially since the first row, I think, you've got Prema, freshman rookie team. You've got a one-off team in Sato, and then, of course, you've got a Ward over here with the full-time effort, who's got nothing to lose and everything to gain by winning this race. I think it's going to be a fun one. You got to watch those first 2 rows. It's going to be crazy. Now let's talk about real quick. Let's recap the NASCAR AllStar race. That was this weekend as well. It was at North Wilkesboro Speedway. What a cool... I love the fact that we're back at North Wilkesboro. I don't think I've explained that. I can express that enough, how cool it is. It's a perfect NASCAR short track. I think somebody, I can't remember who, described it as, how Wilkesboro isn't perfect. Maybe it was Kenny Wallace. I don't know. It's not a perfect track. We went to all the cookie cutter tracks where they were all, precisely measured and all this stuff. And then you have Wilkesboro where it's weird elevation and it's not symmetrical and all this stuff. And it just puts on a really fun race. We had a great truck race. Incredible Cars Tour race. If you missed that Cars Tour race, boy, I feel bad for you. It was especially since it was on FS1, so all you really had to have is cable instead of Flow Racing, which is what you usually need in order to watch Cars Tour races. Either way, what a fun one that was. But hey, Christopher Bell won that race. Ironically enough, I will be very curious to see if Christopher Bell is going to be the next guy to run the double. I really think that he's going to be the next guy that's going to really attempt that. He said he wants to do it before, and the fact that he's just now won the All-Star race, so it's kind of like I've already won this thing now. I don't have to worry about the heats or making it in or whatever. I'm in, whatever. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. I think that he'll be the guy who try and run the double next year. Or not next year, but next. But speaking of Christopher Bell, Joey Logano was not happy with him over the way he was raced during that event, and I'm surprised. I look at that and I say, Joey, that is the pot calling the kettle black here. And that's all I can say. That is, Logano would race the same way. And he's upset that Christopher Bell raced him that way. Like, Joey, you are the ultimate king of knowing how to race a guy in this modern style of cup racing, where you can't get underneath the guy and just kind of move him out of the way. You got to actually be a jerk to him on the racetrack sometimes. He does that all the time with the blocking moves, with the way he manipulates the air, takes the air away from people and everything. That's how he races. Why is he upset when he gets kind of raced the same way, even maybe a little bit more aggressively? Anyway, but we did have that promoter's caution, which happened when Michael Waltrip ended up dropping the flag. That was funny. I didn't expect that. I couldn't believe that, but I fully anticipated it. Michael Waltrip, never change, please. And then let's talk about that truck race. Truck race was a lot of fun, especially the last lap. You've got Lane Riggs, Corey Heim racing for the race victory, and Riggs drives it right in there, pushes Heim up the racetrack. Heim loses it coming out of turn 2. Then who comes around in third place but Chandler Smith, Lane Riggs' teammate, who goes ahead and steals that lead, and Riggs can't obviously get his teammate back, doesn't want to bump and run his teammate, doesn't want to wreck his teammate, so he just settles for second, even though he probably had a chance at the win. Holy cow, what a race. Just great fun. Just a good fun race to go back and watch. Highly recommend it. It was very enjoyable to watch, I'll say that. So, all right, that covers it for NASCAR. Let's talk about the upcoming week coming, because this is probably going to be the last, what I like to call, Racemas, which is Christmas for race fans. Now, Racemas, if you're unfamiliar, which if you're watching this show, hopefully you are familiar with it, but it is one of the greatest viewing days for motorsports ever. You start the day with the Formula One Monaco Grand Prix, arguably one of the most prestigious Formula One races of all time. You could say it's boring, but you can't argue its prestige. It's only boring because the cars are too wide. Narrow those cars up. Like I said, remember a couple of weeks ago when I was saying, watch Formula E in Monaco? That's why. Now, you start your day with Formula One Monaco Grand Prix, then as soon as that's over, basically as soon as the coverage goes off the air, you're moving almost immediately into Indy 500 mode. Indy 500, the pageantry starts, you get back home again in Indiana, you have the flyover, you have the drivers start your engines, and then you have the pace laps. It was all going, obviously all that pageantry that goes into it. Then we have the Indy 500, and the Indy 500 goes, and as soon as the Indy 500 is over, we've had somebody drink the milk and kiss the bricks and parade around the track with Dave Calabro wearing the wreath and everything with the 500 Festival Princesses and that in that convertible. Then you go right down into Charlotte and you lock in for the Coca-Cola 600 to find out who's going to win NASCAR's longest race, and probably, at least in the past couple of years, has been one of NASCAR's most entertaining races, especially with this next-gen car. Hopefully, it is better than what we saw at Kansas and what we've seen in some of the other mile and a halves, which may make us a little bit nervous. But either way, it's a great day of racing, and it might be the last one, because this is going to be one of the last time for the foreseeable future that Monaco will fall on this day. Obviously, they've moved Monaco now up a week to coincide with moving Canada up to the Miami weekend and moving things around with the Formula One calendar. So it's going to be different. It's going to be a lot different. But race fans, enjoy it while you can. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a great day. It's the greatest day for motorsports. And as we sign off, I want to remind you guys that we are going to have an Indy 500 prediction special coming up after Carb Day, so be sure to stay tuned to WTHR Plus for that, because I'm going to make my picks, and we're going to see if I'm going to have to actually put a sock in my mouth come next week. So, thank you guys so much for watching. For WTHR Plus, my name is Rob Peeters, and this has been The Racing Report.